Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation's LNTV. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. Today, we're going to be talking about the G7, the fallout from that, what's happened behind the scenes, and how we can really interpret that away from the media frenzy. To help us out with this is Liberty Nation's own Tim Donner. Thanks for being here, Tim.
My pleasure, Mark.
So, Tim, we've seen the front page news about the recently completed G7. It's fair to say that Donald Trump handled himself pretty well. The US media didn't really go in for the kill with the usual attack dog MO. Why do you think this is?
Well, there's a few possible reasons. One of them is that the media is afraid to look like fake news in case there really is a China trade deal, as Trump seems to be implying is on the table. We don't know if that's just a negotiating tactic or whatever, but I don't think they want to be made to look bad in the event something consequential does happen that might actually, God forbid, make Donald Trump look good. Another possibility is that, the American public just doesn't care about the G7. And in fact, Mark, most people don't understand it. They don't understand what it's for. It's an international intergovernmental economic organization consisting of the US and Canada from North America, from England and Italy, and Germany and France in Europe, along with Japan in the Far East. So it's those 7 countries. I don't think most people even know that. So I don't know that they felt it was worth, whether the left-wing media felt it was worth expending any more of their bullets when really they're focusing mostly on Trump's white supremacy and they don't really feel like changing the subject.
Pretty good summation, Tim. Yeah, that seems about right to me. One of the big announcements that came out was that, as you mentioned, Japan's also part of the G7, but that Japan and the US are looking to strike a trade deal. Now, they were both very careful to say that this is a trade deal in principle, meaning that I assume the broad strokes have been agreed, but the finer detail hasn't. Now, my question for you, Tim, is this likely to be a real trade deal? Because nobody had really heard of it before. Or is it perhaps just some leverage in the China trade war?
I think it may be all of that. I think it's a real negotiation, and it's certainly leverage. Whether it was meant primarily as leverage or primarily to make a deal, a real deal with a longtime ally ever since World War II, Japan. And it's worth noting that Abe of Japan and Trump of the US are about as close as any 2 presidents in the world, or certainly Abe is as close to Trump as any other world leader. There's no love lost between Japan and China. You can check history and see the number of wars and conflicts they've been involved in. So lest we think because they're both Asian countries that they certainly get along and share in animosity to the U.S., not true at all. Japan and China are totally different, and I really do think that Shinzo Abe of Japan, the leader of Japan, would be willing to go along with something that's being used just for leverage if it weakens China in any way.
Yeah, it's very much about power control within the region. Pretty good analysis there. I mean, for me, one of the high points of the G7 was Trump's almost casual invitation to the Russian leader Vladimir Putin to bring him back into the fold. Now, is this, as you say in America, is it too soon after the Russiagate scandal collapsed, after the collapse of this thing? Will it provide ammunition for those who are trying to keep the idea of Russian collusion alive and well?
Well, I do think that while there was no collusion between Trump and Russia, that was discovered in the Robert Mueller special counsel investigation, there certainly was a lot revealed in that investigation that doesn't make Russia look very good, and that just shines a Klieg light on Russia's persistent interference in foreign elections. Now, let's just say that's not unique to Russia. The media, the hysterical media, acted like Russia is the only country that interferes in other people's elections. In fact, everybody has a stake in everybody else's election because everybody has interests in a global sense. The answer to your question is it probably is too soon. And I don't think there's a lot of appetite in the G7 countries to put Russia in If there was, they wouldn't have stopped being the G8 and becoming the G7 in 2014 when they kicked Russia out 5 years ago after their invasion of Ukraine. So I think Trump may be floating this as a sort of a trial balloon, but I also don't think that Vladimir Putin is interested in visiting as an attendee. I think he'll only come to future G7 or what he hopes will again become G8 summits without becoming a full-fledged member.
Yeah, I mean, one of the few negative things that we saw come out of this was after President Trump offered to host the next G7 next year. I believe it was floated that it was either the Mar-a-Lago or the Duran International Hotel where he's doing that. Now, we've obviously heard a lot about cries of the emolument clause being implemented here. Now, do you think President Trump was really just trolling everybody, as they call it, or is he serious about that?
Well, I mean, the president claims that Secret Service and security detail believe that Mar-a-Lago would be the safest, most secure place to have such a summit. Now, whether that's true or not, or it's just a talking point, or it's just hype, I don't know. But this idea that he's going to propose Mar-a-Lago for future G7 summits because he wants to profit off of it. If he wanted to profit more, he wouldn't have run for president, because the truth is, Mark, that the Trump organization has lost tens, perhaps hundreds of millions or even billions since Donald Trump became president because of all the potential conflicts that they had to be on the lookout for. So the Trump organization is not what it used to be. It has not been a profit-making enterprise for Donald Trump to be president of the United States. It's been a money-losing proposition. So if the goal was to make more money, then Donald Trump should have simply stayed in the real estate and TV entertainment business and forget running for president.
Last question for you, Tim. On a scale of 1 to 10, the G7, was it a success for Donald Trump?
I would give it a good 7. I think it's hard to give a grade to it until we find out what happens with the China trade deal and how that might affect all the interactions between these G7 countries in North America, Europe, and Japan. So I'd say, I guess, as of now, I'd still give it a grade of incomplete.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time, your insight, and your answers, Tim. Much appreciated.
Always a guilty pleasure, Mark.
And thank you to you at home for watching. We can't do this without you. So if you enjoyed this, if you learned something, if you got a kick out of it, look down below, press the like and subscribe button, or head over to libertynation.com, where we've got radio, podcast, television, and some really wonderful articles. Thank you for watching.